Hi all, our conversation today is all about finances and empowering individuals in the workplace. I know many of us don't find this a sexy topic of conversation, and like many people, talking about money and empowerment of people with disabilities can make us clam up and run away from facing up to the realities of our situations. Now, before we all get glassy-eyed about this, we need to understand that financial planning and empowerment issues is crucial because it will help you plan your income and expenses and establish your retirement budget, and also empowering individuals back in the workplace. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce my first guest today. Vicky Probert is a highly qualified mortgage advisor, and she describes herself as helping clients achieve property dreams. She's based in South Yorkshire, and she specialises in independent whole-of-market mortgages and commercial financial advice. And my second guest today is Jane Dyer, self-proclaimed superstar from Tudor Rose Limited, who is a specialist consultant who helps empowering individuals to regain control of their work or businesses, and helping businesses become more health and disability confident. So hello ladies, lovely to see you.
Good morning.
Fantastic. So I'm going to start with you, Vicky, today. So this topic around finances, it's so emotive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
We all work very hard to earn our living, basically, and everybody wants to ensure that the money that they earn is spent correctly. Now, things are changing constantly, especially with benefits, government, retirement age, different things, house values, even Brexit. I'm not going to go into that, but there's a lot.
You mentioned the big word.
I know. There's so many different factors that are involved in finances, and some people just don't know where to start. Yeah. And
I know in my own case, I until fairly recently in my life, I would say a good part of my adult life, had real issues about money. Yeah. Because of my upbringing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think sometimes it does depend on the influence of parents as well. So I know for me personally, my parents are of that generation where it used to be you didn't have debt, but their generation, they now have debt, and they're getting older and they still have debt.
I know. I remember when my dad was still alive, we had the one family credit card. Yeah, that was treated like radioactive waste. It was in the special drawer. Yeah, and it came out at Christmas time. And it was literally like a little ceremony. It was like the Amex card or whatever it was. We were going shopping. Yeah, and the card would be used. Flash the plastic, and then it would be put back in that drawer. Yeah, for another 5, 6, 7, 8 months or whatever. Yeah, it wasn't. It was treated with a lot of respect, and also something quite fearful. It was like, we've got to get that paid off as soon as possible.
Yeah. Emergency only. Yeah. Whereas now, everybody's got credit cards in their wallets. Me personally, I put everything on a credit card, but I pay it off every month. Yeah. It's just because there's benefits to that with points and things. So.
It's about managing that, isn't it? That's the art, I think.
Yeah. So a lot of people get to the stage where, because they're not sure where to start, they just ignore it and then just carry on and think it'll all sort itself out in the end and everything. And unfortunately, people are then getting to a certain point in their life where they think, actually, I need to sit down and I need to look at it. And generally, it's a bit too late. Yeah. You can still do things, but if you'd have started planning a bit earlier, then you're able to make things a smoother journey and get more what you want.
It's very hard to motivate, like my daughter who's 27. Yeah. She's not a kid anymore. She is a responsible young woman. But to motivate her to think about financial planning, it's like, it's not going to happen. She's a millennial. It's all about experiences in life.
It's what's happening here and now, because you don't know what's going to happen at the end of it.
She doesn't want to talk about pensions. She doesn't want to talk about saving for a house. Yeah.
I was like that at her age, and I do think that's an age thing that people. It's only when you get a bit older, and probably when you've got that more responsibility, when you've got kids, you've got a house, that you start thinking, oops. Right. What happens now? Yeah.
Yeah, because as for most people on a salary, you know, there's usually a lot of month left, isn't there? After when you've had kids, there's a lot of month left of your salary.
Yeah.
And it's a struggle. And so I know certainly working women now are really struggling, aren't they? If they want to have time off and be a mother, which is a wonderful job, but the financial pressures mean that they often have to go back to work a lot quicker.
Yeah. And then it's the childcare costs as well.
Oh, unbelievable.
Yeah, some people are just working now just purely to pay the childcare, so that when after 5 years, you know, when the child gets to 5, they can go to school then. But for those 5 years, that wage can just go straight to childcare.
Yeah. And it's this fear that women have that they're just going to lose their place in the pecking order in terms of any management opportunities. The irony is that if they actually took a break, I think, and concentrated on being a great mum, and just looked at their finances and trimmed their sails a little bit, they would probably be a lot less stressed. They would gain a lot of time.
I did that.
It is a hard call, isn't it?
Yeah,
You know?
it is. I did that. I decided to give up a career because my daughter was quite colicky when she was born, and I just was not ready to hand her over to anybody else.
Sure.
Everybody's got their own individual circumstances, so our income halved. Yeah. We had to basically cut back on everything. So, yeah, it is hard.
And also, if I'm thinking about my target group, the over 55s, that's another pressure point, isn't it? Because you've got to then think, okay, I'm okay at the minute.
Yeah.
Everything's hunky-dory. But in 10, 15, 20 years' time, I might need care.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's as stark as that, isn't it? And then what do we do? Because we know the National Health Service is creaking with all us baby boomers.
Yeah.
The social care fund, well, that's kind of non-existent at the moment, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I hope whoever gets to be Prime Minister of the Tory party will at least start to address that, because it is a ticking time bomb, isn't it?
It is, yeah. I've got a friend who her dad has recently been diagnosed with dementia and he has cancer and things like that. And the issues that she's going through to try and sort out his care, it's so stressful for her. She went on holiday and she was prepared to go home because she just couldn't cope with being away and not really knowing what was happening with him. So,
and it's going to affect us more and more and more as we age. We are going to get prone to more cancers, probably more dementia, and you know, it's, as I say, it's not a sexy topic, is it?
No.
Nobody sits around the dinner table going, "Oh, I'm financially planning for dementia," and it's like, well, that's a conversation killer, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know? But I think if we're sensible, we've got to start getting our head out the sand and just talking about it.
Yeah, definitely. You know? And the pressure on the people that are in the middle now, so such as myself, I've got children, but my parents are getting that bit older, so they're looking after both sides in a way. I mean, me. My nan,
I'm doing both. I mean, we've got adult children who are selfishly settling down and having children, silly things, and we've got aging, surviving parents as well, where we are literally having discussions about what to do next.
Yeah.
You know? So, we're definitely squeezed. I definitely feel like Bank of Mum in my family. Yeah. And it's like, well, what about me? Yeah. It's all about me.
Yeah, this is it. And when the kids are growing up, kind of the focus is just on them. But as your parents age, then it turns round that actually you've got both sides to look after now. So
absolutely.
How do you sort this out? Financially, emotionally, physically? Yeah, it's difficult.
It is difficult. So my next question then is, the main topic today is, what financial tools are available for the over 55s homeowner? Now, I've said homeowner because that is the demographic who've been fortunate enough generally to get on the housing market. Yeah. And generally they own their own home statistically.
Yeah, they do. So generally, there's a lot of people who are coming up to retirement age now, and what they're finding is they're asset rich but cash poor. Yeah. So a lot of the wealth is tied up in the property.
Definitely.
And because that's what everybody's been aimed to do, get a mortgage, pay it off as soon as possible, then you've got the money. You know, to pass that money on eventually to children.
For legacy, it's a powerful motive, isn't it, for senior people? They're very concerned about passing things on to kids.
But life expectancy is continuing. My nan died probably a couple of years ago at 102. And she'd been ill since the 70s, but she carried on and she carried on. So
it's we're living longer, but not necessarily well, are we?
Yeah.
And as I say, we've had this conversation before here. It's about the pension scheme, and the National Health Service was never designed for us to draw a pension at 65, and then live selfishly for 40 years off the state. It can't carry on.
And there's medical improvements as well, so that's why people are living longer, because there's been medical improvements. So I kind of get why the government are having to move the age on with the retirement, because they can't afford.
I mean, I feel very sorry for the women kind of just caught between the cracks at the minute.
My mum's one of those.
It's a bit hard cheese for them, but it's on the flip side, it is a good thing. It kind of shows that we are living longer. You've got to kind of reassess what work means. I mean, I think employers also have got to kind of be a bit more flexible about working arrangements for senior people, and that they are still an asset. They've got a lot to give companies, but it maybe address the working week a little bit and how that's structured, and where you have to do your work as well. I'm sure Jane will have a few ideas about that. But it's so in terms of I have found with my business with Maison Frais that I've come across two cases, like you say, seniors who are very asset rich, and actually they're sitting on a pile. But they're a bit miserly, for want of a better word, and they're sitting on this money and they're not really doing anything with it. They're not capitalising on it. Or, like you say, the second case where they are very asset rich. They've not invested in the house for 20, 30 years. So it's very it's dated decor. It's not really going to realise its true market value if they do sell it. But they haven't got much ready cash, probably enough just saved by for a funeral. And then that's about it, really. So what are the ways, let's take the second case to start with, where they're asset rich and pretty cash strapped. What opportunities are them for drawing some money from their biggest asset?
From the house.
From the house to kind of think about how they can support their plans for the future, how they can future-proof the house, how they can maybe think about paying for care.
So there's equity release. Now, equity release is a lot of people, because of the history of the product, and quite rightly, it has a bit of a bad reputation because of what happened in the past. People ended up being in negative equity, so money was owed when the house had to be sold and everything. So, but it's changed so much over the last few years.
And I think that's part of the issue, is to get these ideas and this education out there. Because these are financial tools, and tools are there to help you, aren't they?
They are. And it's changed so much. It really has. And equity release, I mean, I'm not going to talk about specifics of interest rates, but
what is equity release for people who still don't know?
So basically, you are sat on a house that it might have a mortgage on it, that might still need to be paid off, but you are able to release the equity out of the house. So it can either be a cash lump sum or it can be an income. So basically, an equity release company will take on board some of the ownership of the property, but for that they give you either a bit of an income or lump sums, and there's different ways you can draw lump sums at different times, and people can pay that back if they want. They can pay the interest back, so that is an option. Or there's another option of what we call rolling it up. So the interest is just added to the added to the initial loan that you've taken out. There are companies out there where actually, if you say, for example, you've come into a bit of money for some reason, you can just pay some of it off if you want.
Okay.
So there's the options there. It does work very much like a traditional mortgage, but there are other aspects to it as well. So it only needs to be paid back either if somebody passes away, if somebody goes into care, or if somebody wants to pay it back as well. So it's because they might move.
Right.
So you have got the opportunity to pay it back there, but a lot of people are now considering the home as part of their financial planning.
Yeah.
So people that are probably in their 30s, 40s are actually thinking, right, okay, now that will be part of my retirement plan to be pulling the money out.
That's right, especially if it's going to be their forever home.
Yeah. So there's all sorts of reasons that people might want to take the money out of the property. Like you say, one of them is home improvements or garden improvements. You know, they might not have done anything for quite a number of years, and
just to make it safer as they age, you know, door widening, underfloor heating, maybe some lifts to access the upper levels, you know. But so they need a few £1,000s that they could maybe access from their biggest asset.
Yeah, definitely. Changing the house as they change their needs, because one of the other options is to move to another property that's more suitable.
Good luck there.
Yeah.
We're all on a national crusade to find downsizing properties. There's very little housing stock to move down into, isn't there?
It's just not there. There might be some there, but there's not only going to be you that's looking at it. There's going to be a number of people.
A bungalow in this country there is so much demand for a bungalow.
Yeah.
There's just not enough. There's been not enough built to kind of satisfy that demand, really.
And there's a cost of moving as well.
Yeah, and the stamp duty, etc.
Stamp duty, cost, and then also there's the emotive part of it.
Yeah.
The emotion is to actually physically moving, but also of living in a property that might have been your lifelong home, and you've got friends, you've got family surrounding you.
And I've noticed, you know, if people are widowed, it's like that emotional pull is so strong. Yeah. And then, you know, the situation where they are maybe starting to get a bit frail. But then having the decisions, and Jane will back this up, the decisions to move are usually taken out of their hands by GPs or adult children, and then it cannot be underestimated the impact that has on people's well-being and their mental health.
Yeah,
you know?
Definitely.
You know?
And I suppose it's just like you said, going back to that education, that actually there is an option that if there is a property there that is part of your asset, well, use that asset to help you achieve what you want to achieve in later life. So whether that be it adds to your income, or whether it pays for you to go on a holiday, or whether it's home improvements, or it could be gifting it to family as well.
I mean, the big thing with adult children is they won't ever say this in a conversation I have with them when I'm talking to their parents or widowed parent, but you can see them thinking, she wants to get my parents to spend my inheritance. You know, I can see how they're thinking, and I get it, but at the same time I have to try and explain to them, and I'm sure you do as well, that actually by investing in the house, it's going to keep its market value, so when the parents do pass, they are going to be left something that is actually going to be worth a lot more money than it is currently.
And you know, it's then also saving on care costs, you know, maybe further down the line. But with the equity release product, there is something called where you can have a certain guarantee that you want to leave so much inheritance to whoever you might want to leave it to, and you can have that guarantee put in within the equity release. So if you plan it from the start as to what you want, and if you want to, you know, leave some money, it can be part of the plan of making sure that you get the right product for your particular circumstances. Everybody's circumstances are
very different and individual, aren't they?
They are,
What's the thing to look out for if people, you know, to make sure they don't feel scammed? Because, you know, we're talking about vulnerable groups of people. And I know the FCA, the Financial Conduct Authority, they have a register, don't they, of kosher companies and things like that. So what do you recommend clients do to kind of check you out, or to check anybody out, to make sure that when they come to your home, they're not scam merchants? Because that is very uppermost in people's mind, isn't it?
It is, and it happens so easily. So obviously it depends what people have got access to, but asking family to help out to make sure something's kosher as well. If you've not got access, because my dad, you ask him to do anything on his phone, it's just like, it's not really not worth it. I may as well do it myself. So checking out the internet, looking at the FCA number, check that where it's saying that it's registered to is actually the right registration for that particular website. Just going on the internet and putting things in there as to if it's genuine, actually making a phone call. There's also the Equity Release Council as well, that there are a number of different councils that are involved in equity release, and if people are registered with them, then you know that they've been checked out and everything as well. So
it's just duty of care, isn't it? Due diligence, and just
definitely
just take an extra 5 minutes just to check people out, and just don't take it on people's word. And it might be that somebody's been recommended, but I would still be cautious with that as well, because if somebody's been recommended but they haven't realised that they're being scammed. It's just passing it down the line, isn't it?
So don't just trust what other people recommend to you. Do your own check-in and everything. Definitely.
Fantastic. Yeah, thank you for that. We'll come back to this topic in a minute. I just want to say hello again to Jane, the lovely Jane. Bring you back into the conversation, Jane. I mean, some of this you were nodding to. It seemed like it was a sort of common sort of thread, really.
It is. A lot of things that Vicky and yourself were saying do cross over into a lot of the needs my clients have. Because my coaching and consultancy work is about trying to get people to be more proactive and think about what might happen, because they can become sick or disabled, and then they'll have difficulties in work or their own business, and then that will affect their income.
Absolutely. And it can happen just like that, can't it, Jane?
It can, yeah.
I mean, we can all be driving along to work one day,
and you
boom,
just don't know.
Something happens and it's life-changing.
It is.
Literally yesterday, in my village, there was an air ambulance hovering literally over my house, and I'm like, what's going on? It was making a right racket, and then it moved off to the other part of the village, and I found out later in the day when I went shopping that a council groundsman who was cutting Spensfield in my village, he took a dip down to the beck side of the field, and he took it wrongly, and it tipped the mower over. Fortunately, he got his leg trapped and he lost his leg, and it was just the smart thinking of passers-by, dog walkers on the field, phoning 999, and they got the air ambulance from Rotherham straight away. And it was just horrific. But that guy has got life-changing injuries.
That's right, and rightly so. Their attention will be on the life-changing injuries or illness that they've now got, and thoughts of their business and their income won't be there. So I'm there to help them retain their work or their business, and so they can have their income still. And it could often be that they're the main breadwinners to a family.
Exactly.
So it has a knock-on effect to mortgage, to them paying their mortgage.
It's expensive getting ill, isn't it?
It is.
You know, I have a friend who's just gone through breast cancer, and she had no payment protection and stuff on her mortgages and things like that, or no work protections. I mean, she's having to phone up, charities and stuff to try and get some help, financial help, because it's not just the losing the regular income, it's the added cost of all the car parking fees for family to visit.
Yeah, having health or disability issues, it's well known that it is an extra cost on people.
Yeah.
The mobility is an extra cost, as you say, parking.
Yeah. And just general transportation, isn't it?
Adaptations that you need, you need to fund from somewhere or find funding from somewhere.
Yeah.
But there is funding out there, and there is support and help out there, which I guide people to. And within the work, again, the same. There are adaptations that need to happen in lots of cases, and that puts lots of employers off. So individuals at risk of losing their jobs, and that's through lack of knowledge on employers' part more than
lack of education.
Discrimination and things.
Yeah.
They think, oh, it's going to cost us a fortune, we can't afford to keep them, and that's not the case.
It's almost like a fear, isn't it?
It is.
It's fear that it's going to cost them an arm and a leg.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of education on the part of yourself and people like yourself. So talk us through then, say like I'm an employer and I've got a long-standing employee who's been very loyal, and I want to kind of do the right thing. And let's say they've got an office job, and I want to do the right thing, but immediately, let's say, certainly around this area, it's quite hilly, you need to walk up some steps to the office. That's an immediate barrier to even getting into the office and doing any work.
It is. If the employee has had an accident or has become ill and then they can't manage stairs, then there's what we call reasonable adjustments that the employers are legally obliged to make.
Right.
But again, a lot of employers don't understand or are not aware of that. So I can educate them, and they can put things in place like just moving the office area of that individual to a ground floor, for example. A lot of things that an employer can do needn't cost anything if they're prepared to do it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it comes down to, which is my forte, this sort of use of space.
Yeah.
You know, people don't use space efficiently in any case.
No, exactly. And it just highlights that people don't use space efficiently or technology. A lot of my clients have sensory impairments, but they're just a lot of them are just a whiz at all the technology that's around, and an employer may not be, but that can all be funded because that's what the individual needs to do the job they've always done, or as well as somebody else without those impairments.
Yeah. So what are the kind of adaptations that you can help people with?
Well, there's getting ramp access to the buildings, as you say. There's advising that the offices move location to a ground floor. Legally, all buildings should be accessible, but my experience is that's not always the case.
No, it's not.
Especially in areas where where you're having converted mill buildings, for example.
Very trendy, but not very useful.
I've been in some which have been really good and they've had lifts, so not a problem. I've been in others, no lift, and a business is on the top floor.
Yeah.
How do my clients get there? So, it's the employer being adaptable. You could go and see your clients rather than have your clients come into the location.
Yeah.
And the premises.
Yeah.
And there's also things about the working day that maybe needs to be managed better for an individual with health issues. They may not be able to do the 9 till 6 that they used to do, but you could arrange for them to work from home part of the day and go in later and leave earlier. Sort of things you may do for parents with children. But they're not going to work less hours in the week if they're prepared to do some of it at home and it suits them better.
And I think that engenders a lot more loyalty as well. And you do feel a bit beholden that you actually do need to crack on and sort of put an exclusion zone around yourself and just let the kids do whatever they do or other things in the house. But when you're in the office mode, that's work. It's not sitting in front of Jeremy Carl drinking coffee.
Check a few emails.
No, I was lucky with a previous employer that I did have opportunity to work from home myself, and as long as I can help people manage that, so you're not sat in front of Jeremy Kyle or something, that you have office hours at home and you have an office space at home. So again, we're back to adapting your space that suits your health and disability issues.
Okay. So what are some of the worst examples of access that you've encountered so far, Jane?
Well, commercial buildings are quite bad. Shops are very bad for people with mobility difficulties. Wheelchairs.
Yeah.
But there again, there's a lot of way to go to get all the shops to be accessible. New builds should be, but again, they're not always. I don't know how they manage to get around it in some cases, but yeah. And in the home, well, that's another story. Lots of homes you cannot get a wheelchair around.
No, certainly.
Anyway.
No, I mean, I've had conversations with potential clients and, we don't need door widening at the moment. I said, but you might later on when your mobility starts to go off, and then the wheelchair won't actually fit into your kitchen.
I mean, if you live in old cottages that can be split level, you've got steps to the kitchen or the living room and things like that. And if you live in 1930s houses, you've often got steps to the front door.
Yeah.
And that they are the best. 1930s houses aren't too bad in terms of space in the hallways and things.
That's right. They're usually quite spacious, aren't they?
But
the 1930s semi is almost like the perfect house to adapt.
Yeah.
Because they were built with a lot more space in mind, and they had better garden space as well.
Yeah.
So you can kind of extend out of those ones.
Yeah. And if you have health and disability issues, you don't want to. Many of my clients will say they don't want anything to be different. So they don't want their house to look like somebody with disability or health issue lives there.
They don't want it sort of neon signed, like disabled person lives here.
No, so the planning needs to think of the aesthetics.
Yeah.
It needs to look like it has always looked, really.
If I can just go back to Vicky in terms of finances. So what kind of financial arrangements could be made to help Jane's potential clients?
Yeah, so part of, if we're talking about the equity release, that is something that can be take the money out of the property, and like you were saying earlier, making those adaptations, but also looking at the aesthetics of the property as well, and updating it as to, so it does hold the value of the property. That's just going to increase the value of the property as well. And there's going to be more and more people that are looking for properties that can cater for their needs. So even if you're doing it for yourself, and then the property gets sold in a few years or 10 years, whatever it might be, at least it's already been adapted.
Yeah, I've seen a report that says in the construction industry they are gearing up for a lot of these sort of 19th century properties to have major sort of facelifts and adaptions to be future proof for the generations as well.
Yeah. And I've noticed that just myself being out and about. I've seen new developments that have got ramps as well as steps to the properties.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So they are beginning to think of the future.
Well, they should do, really.
They should. And then they're just accessible for everybody at any time in life.
Yeah. As I say, it's the trend is we're going to be staying in our family home if we're lucky enough to own it a lot longer. We're not going to flit about so much. The trend is, not going into care, but having care come to you in your probably adapted home. And that's really what people want.
It is, and a lot of the adaptions that you may need in the home, councils can help fund, and you can get grants from councils.
Can you still get grants though, Jane?
You can, but it's means tested most of the time. So that with an ageing population and things, that is something that I think the social care and council side need to be considering for the future.
Because I say the social care. What shocked me, and I didn't know this until fairly recently, was that when the National Health Service was set up, they didn't include social care because they were expecting people to kind of pop off.
Right.
At their sort of, 70 years and 10.
Yeah.
Which was why it was never integrated properly into the National Health Service. It's always been a little island. And that's why they have these funding problems that we've got today. It's kind of because, the population has become a victim of its own success. The government policies and better health and education and better food available has meant that people, like you say, are living longer. But the legal arrangements and the structure of the social care fund and the way the government have pushed it back onto the responsibility of local authorities, which is a bit unfair, really, has meant that we're in this pickle.
Yeah.
And it's actually going to get very much worse, I think, before it gets better. Which is sad.
And there's a lot of small. There's bigger construction things that can be done in homes, but there's a lot of assisted technology.
Oh yeah,
type things
we've had conversations
that can
here
be done
about
in the home,
smart tech,
which will be really good for a lot of people. You know, like reaching the plug sockets and reaching light socket switches.
Yeah,
you can do all that by an iPad instead,
or not
or
even
or your phone.
Yeah, or not even that.
Yeah,
you know, just by talking to your home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You know, your home will be voice activated, and it'll be smart enough to know it's you, and you can just say, turn the lights on, dim them, put the oven on.
So there is
beam me up, Scotty.
There is a lot of things out there that people can have to aid their life if they get sick or disabled.
Yeah.
But often there's a financial cost to that. So that's where they need to be.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to be thinking about the future and things that might happen.
And you have to take care as well when you're looking into equity release, especially if you're wanting it as an income, because that can affect benefits as well. So that's something that, you know, if you are thinking about it, just check all that out first. And somebody who is advising on equity release should be able to give you some of the information that you need.
Yeah, because they'll assume, well, actually, you've got this pile of money. Why do you need benefits?
Yeah, because it's an income as such. If you get lump sums, then there's not as much of an effect on it, but it's obviously then managing those lump sums. Yeah. Everybody's different. Somebody might just need a regular income because otherwise, if they have money, it might just disappear. Yeah. But some need big lump sums, or even it can be smaller lump sums to make the adaptations that are required.
But then some benefits aren't affected by your income.
No, some are universal.
And it's just checking it out.
Are there any other products out there in the market now that you know that are fairly new to the market that you know of that might help people? Or is it just equity release?
No, so there is a product called a retirement interest only mortgage. So it's a bit of a hybrid between a standard mortgage and an equity release. So it acts like a normal mortgage, as in it's taking affordability into account, because with a purely equity release later life lending product, they don't take into account your affordability.
Oh, right.
Because that their security
their first charge is on the house.
Is the house. Yeah. So they don't look at whether you can pay it. But with retirement interest only, they have to look at what your affordability is in retirement. So
that could be a problem for, say, like a widowed woman.
Yeah.
You know, because if that's the case, do they take the husband's maybe occupational pension into consideration or not? So
the way it can work, if there is a couple, they will look at, not every lender, but some of the lenders will just look at the person who would be left least well off if one of them passed away. So they're looking at the worst case scenario. So you could have somebody that's got a good pension income and everything, but unfortunately if they pass away, then the other person won't have that. So even though they might be able to afford it, when the lender looks at it, they're not looking at the person who has the income. They're looking at the person who will be left
in that house,
and will they be able to afford it? And if they can't, then unfortunately, it you know, they can turn it down. So
is that a popular option, or is it always going to be sort of equity release in this country, do you think?
I think because it's only a new product, there's a lot of lenders that are coming on board, and they're realising some of the issues around this affordability that people, you know, it was supposed to be kind of something to solve, a bit of an issue of people being stuck, especially there are, I think it's, the figures are within between 2017 and 2032, there's about 40,000 interest-only mortgages that are coming to the end, and people are going to be in the 60s and they don't know how to pay it off.
Because they won't have maybe an income in terms of jobs, will they?
At that age? So that's why the retirement interest only was produced, because to help people. So basically it does look at affordability, it looks at how you can pay it on your income into retirement, but there's no end date to it like with a normal mortgage. So that's where the difference is. So again, that just gets paid back on death, on going into care, or if you sell the property as well. So that is, you know, another option. That's
but
there.
I suppose, you know, it's like you say, there's a menu of options, and it depends on every case, doesn't it? And everybody's circumstances are different.
Yeah, it does. And there's a product out there that's recently that's one of the lenders. It's only one lender that does it. That's called a buy-to-let equity release product. Yeah. So basically, you don't necessarily have to release the equity out of your own property. If somebody's not comfortable with taking the money out of a property that they live in, but they've got rental properties, they can take the money out of that.
I'm all in now.
And some people use that to pay for the care. So what they do is they release the equity out of that property, but they're renting it out, so they've got an income to pay the equity release, but it's also helping to pay for the care as well.
Oh, that's very interesting. Is that a new project?
Yeah, it's. I think it's been out a while, but there's only one lender that's doing it at the moment. So again, it's that education and letting people know about it.
It's interesting, is it, that the financial market is adapting? Because let's face it, the actuarials, who are all the mathematicians behind your industry, they've seen all the charts, haven't they? They've seen all the trends, and they can see that there's money to be had out of elderly people.
Yeah. You know? So at the moment with equity release, I think what the figures that I've found out recently, there is something like £6 billion worth of funding, and there's only £4 billion worth of people that are taking the products on. So there's a lot of competition out there at the moment, because they're pushing money into it because they know that the equity release market is growing. So there's a lot of competition with the lenders out there. So the time now for equity release has never been as good as it is at the moment, just because of the competition that's out there. So
So these future trends are quite interesting. I'm just sitting here thinking, you know, we've just got through the PPI scandal and all these companies saying, have you been mis-sold PPI? I can see in a few years' time, have you been mis-sold a retirement interest only mortgage?
Interest only. Yeah, that is on our radar now. That's one of the things that PPI is going to go to interest only mortgages.
Well, they've got to employ those people somehow, haven't they?
Let's look at the statistics, right? Okay.
And what future trends do you see in your industry, Jane, or things that you come across that people need to be aware of?
Generally in society, people are more aware of the impact of health or disability issues, and that people want to be just the same as everyone else, and the society being more inclusive.
Yeah,
so I think a lot of things are coming on board, like the assisted technology and the awareness of employees and things like that.
And I think things like, I know it sounds a bit glib, but things like the Paralympics, the recent Paralympics, showing such empowered, to use your words, empowered, strong athletes.
That's right, but
after
I think that
a while, you don't even notice what their disability is. You just get swept away with their competitiveness.
You do.
Their
but
drive.
It's like with able-bodied people. Not everybody is going to be a world-class athlete, whether they're in a wheelchair or not. So
No. I'm just saying, but it does help start these conversations, and it does show. It gives voice to people with disability, and you're not invisible anymore.
No, and I think with my own work, I have a disability myself, which I've had since birth, so I've never known any different. Yeah. So I've grown up with a will do, can do, get on with it sort of attitude from my parents. So hopefully, if I come across people that have got something new now to deal with, that I can instill that empowering aspect to them.
Yeah, because I should imagine, and I know I would feel the same. There must be a kind of a grieving process.
There is, there is with my client when they're in this state of wanting to do the work the same as they've always done, whether that's 90 hours a week or whatever, and it's a long adjustment for them to, it's like it is grieving, to give that, well, not give that up, to change that to fit into what they realistically can do with and manage with their health now.
And it's the same, but in a slightly lesser form, I think, the ageing process.
Yeah.
And I had this conversation with my husband only last week when we were hefting boxes and doing some decorating on a new holiday cottage. And we both said, we both haven't got the strength we had 10 years ago. And it's now becoming quite noticeable. My grip strength has definitely gone. And I don't like it. And it's like, well, why can't I do this before? And I was like, well, because you're getting older. But you adapt to what you can do rather than keep focusing on what you can't do anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. And that's what I help my clients with. It's adapting to where they are now.
Yeah.
And where they want to go, not to think that the world has fallen apart and they've got to give everything up and they've got to move house and they've got no income.
Yeah,
because none of that need be the case.
No,
it's just a case of adapting to a new situation, as you do when you age.
Yeah. That's been fantastic, ladies. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you for these quite positive, messages about finances, because we're all a bit ostrich-like, aren't we? Just stick our head in the sand and don't really want to talk about money. And, the empowering and powerful messages that, life carries on, you can adapt, you can still have a very fulfilled life. Employers can just come on board, get the best out of their employees. And actually, if you've invested time, money and training in your most important asset, which is your human worker,
you don't
want to throw that away, do you? You don't want to kind of dismiss them and think, oh, well, for the want of doing a little bit of adaptation.
That's right, and it can cost them a lot more to have to recruit someone else.
Yeah.
Train them.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much, ladies, and I hope to see you again.
Thank
you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.